excitement, wrestling's primo numero uno announcer. And this is WrestlePoopy, where we take a deep dive into the dookie of the annals of professional wrestling. And since Halloween is right around the corner, we're going to take a look at the horrors of Halloween Havoc 1998. Now, I know I'm wearing Halloween Havoc 1997, but it's the only Halloween Havoc shirt that I own, so don't give me poopy. Instead, I will be giving you poopy with Hogan versus Warrior Part 2 and Halloween Havoc 1998. Let's go!
And as always, I'll be rating this match as I rate every match on the Dookie Drop scale. 1 Dookie Drop being a small stitch, 2 Dookie Drops being a minor stitch, 3 being a bad stitch, 4 being a colossal toilet choker, and 4 being a Titan Taco Bell closer.
It's the match of the decade that everyone allegedly waited 8.5 years to see with alleged anticipation. In 1990, Hogan and Warrior faced off in a world title versus intercontinental title match at WrestleMania 6. Hogan was the established hero against up-and-coming hero, the Ultimate Warrior. Toronto would never be the same.
Now, over 8 years later, in 1998, Las Vegas, Nevada would never be the same either. The unsuspecting crowd were about to witness the worst sequel shot in Vegas since Sister Act 2.
Hey, I like Sister Act 2.
You would. Goldberg would be appearing this night, but not Whoopi. Hogan comes out to Voodoo Child, which is followed by the NWO theme. Because he's so big of a star, he gets 2 theme songs to intro by.
Warrior comes out running like Forrest Gump to a Dr. Pepper convention. It's stuff like this that would blow him up to the point he had no energy for his wrestling matches. That's fine if you're going to squash a wrestler in a couple of minutes, but not so fine if you have to go for nearly 15 minutes, which we would learn here.
In 1990, Warrior and Hogan split the crowd down the middle in their match at Mania 6, as the crowd didn't know who to cheer louder for. Here they didn't know who to boo louder for 8 years later.
The match begins with some stalling.
Later.
And some more stalling.
Much later.
And still more stalling.
I quit. Oh man, there's more stalling here than my grandma's jalopy in her heart.
A fed-up Warrior nails Hogan with a punch.
And if you guessed Hogan exits the ring to stall some more, you're smarter than the booker of this crap.
The Warrior wants a test of strength, while Tony Schiavone and Heenan talk about demons.
Man, I wish a priest would come in and exorcise these two so we can get some kind of action.
Hogan agrees to a test of strength, but only after he stops a mudhole in Warrior. He immediately holds hands with Warrior for a very long time, while laughing like an over-the-top villain from a kung fu movie.
They can't even muster the energy to give us a proper recreation of the famous BJ shot from WrestleMania 6.
They are nice enough to give us enthusiastic wrist locks and the famous crisscross spot from Mania 6. This is actually a pretty well done and smooth move, but don't get used to it. This is the best you'll get in this match.
After some brawling outside, the two gladiators come back inside where referee Nick Patrick gets knocked out by the latest NWO member, the Invisible Man. Hey, it's Halloween after all.
Hogan drops a knee on Nick Patrick as he calls for reinforcements. Stevie Ray, the Giant, and Vincent Meat Sauce Jones.
Giant accidentally kicks Hogan in the noggin as Warrior ducks. Warrior disposes of Stevie, Vincent, and the Giant. Vincent just charged you $50 for that punch, Warrior.
We get a backdrop as Hogan decides to sneak an actual wrestling move in this match, just to prove he knows more moves than Warrior, because he's a dastardly heel.
Patrick comes to just in enough time to get his leg kicked by the Warrior. Hey, Warrior, your opponent's the bald dude, don't you know that?
Hogan spanks Warrior with the weightlifting belt like he's some kind of a crying kid at Walmart who keeps wanting for a CM Punk action figure, even though his mom and dad tries to buy him Adam Page action figures, 'cause it's all they got. Warrior displays absolute artistry in an amazing wrestling move that hasn't been attempted or seen before that time or since. A Donkey Kong barrel roll, a.k.a. a log roll, a.k.a. a rolling block, that trips Hogan and keeps him from almost hitting Warrior with more arthritic elbows.
Warrior misses Hogan with a splash and humps around like a dog in heat.
Warrior gets kinky with Hogan this time and straps him with the weightlifting belt. But Nick Patrick yells at Warrior and distracts him so Hogan can fumble around with a drug break from a plastic bag in the corner.
It turns out to be flash paper, though, that Hogan lights and tries to burn the Warrior with, but it fizzles out quicker than Warrior's WCW career and misses the Warrior by a country mile. Hogan burns his own mustache off instead. Oh, brother.
The two gladiators fumble around for a couple of more agonizing minutes until Eric Bischoff and Horace Hogan comes out to put the match and everyone else out of misery.
Bischoff slaps a headlock on Nick Patrick as Nick contemplates demanding combat pay while Horace Hogan taps Warrior in the back with the chair shot that my decrepit granny with rheumatoid arthritis could have swung harder. Warrior sells this weak chair shot like he was the revenue my grandpa shot with the shotgun who was trying to take his moonshine.
Hogan pins Warrior, and both Hogans decide to celebrate with a bonfire after the match, where the Warrior is the kindling.
But security and WCW officials put a stop to this barbecue, but knowing Hogan, he would have just lit his own boots on fire by accident anyway, so Warrior was never really in any real danger.
This was perhaps one of the most disappointing high-profile matches in wrestling history. It's not as bad as its reputation, however, and it has some comedic value with the badly botched fire spot.
The first 5 minutes of it is actually decent, but once the referee is knocked out by an unseen force, possibly a young John Cena, the match just nosedives, much like the airplane that Warrior talked about at WrestleMania 6.
Warrior had a wounded bicep in this match due to an injury he sustained a month earlier at Fall Brawl, and both of these men were well past their primes by several years at this point.
Nobody was expecting a 5-star encounter from these two, but Dave Meltzer gave it 5 stars anyway. Negative 5 stars, it is.
Man, Hogan vs. Warrior Part 2 really was a number 2. Shoo-wee!
No, it wasn't. It was more like a number 3 on my Dookie Drop scale. Sure, it's a bad match, but it's not nearly as bad as its reputation says it is. But it's still a fiery disaster.
It's such a fiery disaster that we couldn't show you the actual match, and we had to show you the still photos instead, because it's that painful.
Well, actually, YouTube was being a real botch and wouldn't let you use the videos of the match during your B-roll.
Yes, and I'm still upset about it. This is the third time I tried to shoot this piece of...
Anyway, let's move on. I hope everybody has a happy Halloween.
Yes, and I do too. And a special Halloween treat for you will be this match right here to help us all cure from the hurt and pain. It's Goldberg versus DDP during that same pay-per-view.